Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to this planning workshop. My name is Dennis McVeigh. I am a council member for the city of Rainier and have been the chair for the past 3 years on the Sustainable Thurston Task Force. So I've been asked to welcome you all and sit back and enjoy yourself, and please ask lots of questions. And with that, I'll hand it over to Heather and she'll get things rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you all for being here tonight. This is a great turnout. We're really excited. On behalf of the Planning Association of Washington and the State Department of Commerce, we want to welcome you to the short course on local planning for sustainable development. The short course, which is always open and free to citizens, has been presented in local communities in the state of Washington continuously since 1977. Tonight, we're presenting a special short course on local planning for sustainable development that's funded by U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Sustainable Communities Grant, and we're all glad you're here. My name is Heather Balish. I work for the Washington State Department of Commerce and Growth Management Services. With me tonight is Ann Fritzel, who is the short course coordinator, and we've been working in partnership with the Thurston Regional Planning Council to coordinate tonight's course. So tonight's course will provide an overview of planning for sustainable development, a panel to describe the development of the Thurston Regional Plan for Sustainable Development and how it might be implemented, and some other examples of sustainable planning and action around the state. Our first speaker this evening is Miranda Redinger. Miranda grew up in the mountains of West Virginia and attended the University of Virginia School of Architecture. After many years of waitressing and bartending, her professional career began as an AmeriCorps volunteer working for an affordable housing land trust in Ashland, Oregon. Back on the East Coast, she became the Bath County planner and zoning administrator, then journeyed west again to join the city of Shoreline in 2007, and now considers herself a transplanted Pacific Northwesterner. Miranda is currently a senior planner specializing in long-range strategic plans. She is a project manager for sub-area planning for 2 light rail stations coming to Shoreline in 2023. As co-chair of the city's Green Team, she helped develop the city's environmental sustainability strategy, launched a Forever Green sustainability indicator tracking website last April, worked on Shoreline's newly adopted climate action plan, and represents the city through the King County Cities Climate Collaboration. So please join me in welcoming Miranda Redinger.
Thank you. So some of you may have seen this picture before. It was taken in 1968 from the Apollo 8 space shuttle. It's one of the first views of Earth from space, and often referred to as the pale blue dot. Was the first time a lot of people were able to see Earth from this perspective, which is a finite system. However, before we are out at the global level talking about global issues and the impact of local decision-making on them, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This is Bluegrass, Virginia, where I was born. It's a beautiful place, a pristine environment. You could see every star. The water was clean, had different environmental issues than the Pacific Northwest. As Heather mentioned, I went to the University of Virginia. The gentleman on the left side of the screen there is William McDonough, and he was the dean of the School of Architecture when I was there, also the father of waste equals food and cradle-to-cradle philosophies. So at 18, I was lucky to sort of have the doors blown off my mind with a lot of really good information about sustainable development, and I knew what I wanted to do. Moved out to Oregon, spent a couple years on the West Coast, ended up back almost exactly where I started in Virginia, and then came to Shoreline in 2007. Last year, I was trained by Al Gore. You can see them kind of snuggled up on him there in the picture, but was trained to do his climate reality presentation. So these are just some influences that I will bring to my discussion this evening. As I said, I worked on a sustainability strategy, launched a Forever Green indicator tracking website to track the progress of Shoreline in its quest to become a sustainable community over time. was project manager for the major update of the comprehensive plan that we went through last year that I assume many of you are working on this year and in the near future. Recently adopted climate action plan and light rail stationary planning, which for me is sort of paradigm shift on the ground. So I find it very interesting. So now, this might be the old presentation. A new challenge with regard to sustainability is that we are using the resources of more planets than we currently have. Some in the planning world, it's a lingo of a recent conference where we call that the wicked problem. It's one of the major issues is with the amount of resource use that is not sustainable. If you break this down, it can be different systems, economic, social, ecological, environmental. They're often represented through the standard 3E model that many of you have seen. It's on the agenda tonight. It's a good model, but there's something that someone told me and now I can't unsee, and it's that this little area here in the middle is supposed to be what's truly sustainable. And if we're to really make an impact on our resource issues or combating climate change, creating more resilient systems, we need it to actually look more like this, where the overlap between these systems is greater than any of the individual pieces. Some have said it's more like a nesting doll, where you actually must embed the systems within each other. This is a representation of how it may look on a larger scale. Say this is how different cities or counties or states or countries could create their own system, and then how they could work together as a whole based on individual characteristics of the location. Now, for the most part tonight, I'm going to use the terms sustainability, climate change, and resiliency sort of interchangeably. As planners, we often spend a lot of time wordsmithing and being very careful about the terminology that we use. And I will say that there is a lot of overlap between those three different concepts, but there are some distinctions, and I think it's worth pointing some of those out. In this case, with climate change, the main challenge, the main issue, is a little more daunting, a little more frightening, a little more severe, and especially with regard to that salmon, most of the time, climate change and sustainability and resilient systems have the same goal. But say one of your climate change strategies is increasing hydropower, which we have a lot of around here. Well, sometimes that runs up against the sustainability or the resiliency of salmon populations. So when you go down the rabbit hole of sustainability and climate and all of that, it can be a pretty tricky journey. So we're going to cover some of that, I think, generally speaking, starting from a place, if you happen to live in a place where you, for example, can't say the word climate change at a public meeting, and you need to use one of these safe words, as it were, then starting with an understanding of sustainability before you progress to the more intricate details of climate action, et cetera, is a good place to start. So that's where we'll focus mostly tonight. As I said, there is overlap, but some distinctions between the first three terms. With the second set, it's important to understand, especially as we go out to our communities and we talk to them and we make decisions in a public forum, to understand also the difference between global warming, climate change, and weather. Global warming is the phenomena of what is happening. Climate change is the effect of that. And weather is affected by climate. One of the best ways that I heard to describe the difference between them is when you're going on a vacation, you choose your destination based on the climate of that area. It's a long-term sort of weather pattern, but you pack your bags based on the weather forecast in the immediate future. Now, up until 2012, 2012 being rather a banner year for the conversation about climate change, it shifted in a number of ways, and one of those ways was to be able to make the connection between weather and climate change. Storms like Sandy like the typhoon that recently devastated the Philippines. These are the kind of events that people are saying, wait, if the 100-year storm is happening every decade and the 10-year storm is happening every year, maybe we should start to connect these two. And then mitigation and adaptation used to be the conversation focused on how do we prevent climate change. Now we've sort of crossed a threshold where we realize that we can't entirely prevent it. We can mitigate to the extent that we can, and we need to continue to do that so we don't get to the worst case scenarios and beyond. But we will have to adapt to certain aspects of our weather systems and our food and water systems that will change. So, for instance, what are the kind of things that we're going to have to adapt to? This is our national heat records that were either tied or broken last summer, just in June and July. So you see almost 5,000 records were broken in terms of heat. You can see that the summer temperature has shifted. This was the baseline from 1951 to 1980. This is 1981 to 1991, 1991 to 2001, and 2001 to 2011. You can see that the extreme temperature events that used to be 0.1% now cover 10% of the Earth. A pet peeve of mine is that when we talk about climate change in terms of degrees, we use Celsius. So people, what used to be the worst case scenario of 6 degrees Celsius climate change, if we use the measurement that we use in this country when we're talking to people, that's 10.8 degrees. I think that we can all understand the difference between 90 degrees and 100 degrees and how that feels in our homes and our, in our enjoyment of outside, not to mention natural systems and ecosystems that evolved to be within a certain sort of comfort zone. Coming a little more close to home, these are the large wildfires that were burning last year on August 7th in 2012. As you can see, this is one of the major impacts that our region stands to face over time. Globally, here's a look at drought conditions from an international panel on climate control or climate change. The drought conditions projected globally from 2000 to 2009, 2030 to 2039, 2060 to 2069, and 2090 to 2099. Now, we kind of have this one little Goldilocks zone here, but look, the agricultural heart of our country stands to suffer. And speaking of our little Goldilocks zone, you can see here that Washington State last summer was the only state that had only above normal temperatures, whereas a lot of places had extreme, much above or record warming. And with regard to climate change, part of the purpose of this talk is why plan for resilient systems? Why plan for sustainability? Why go above and beyond GMA mandates? Well, we know that we've got a certain amount of population projected to come to this region. We know that because we have good jobs, we have good growth, we have good quality of life, we have, we're getting better transit systems. So we will continue to attract people in addition to, the birth rate and other, other ways that population grows exponentially. However, the growth management doesn't take into account climate refugees. And from this map, it's kind of easy to see at some point people are going to figure out that we have it pretty good here in Washington State, and they will start coming. So here are some of our systems that are vulnerable to climate: food supply, water, global health, and I could talk for a long time about all of those systems, but I'll just briefly talk about our water needs. We think of the Pacific Northwest as a very wet place with not a lot of water scarcity in the near future. But here's nationally our existing accessible water supply. There will be an increase in demand. Even with an increase in supply and an increase in efficiency, there's a remaining gap. So, we need to think about a future where we're considering what we're going to do about that. And I don't know about you, other planners in the room or government officials, I think that I personally was born without the fear of change gene. I know that most people have this gene and are afraid, but what I'm afraid of is the status quo. And these are some of the reasons, that we need to change our current practices, because our current practices look like this, and this, and this, and this. And this is what they do to my mountains. And that, to me, why this is immediate and it's personal. So what can you do? You think, the major challenges here are daunting, and they are scary, and they're a little big to think about, and often people can't. And that's why we don't have these conversations very often. But one thing that you can do as local government officials, as planning commissioners, as citizens who can advocate for these things, is when you update your comprehensive plan, include policies about climate protection, sustainability, greenhouse gases, climate change. As I mentioned, I'm from rural Virginia. This is not the kind of thing I could put in a comprehensive plan in Bath County, Virginia. I tried. It didn't work. But here, I feel very glad that I'm able to have this conversation with our public, and they are supportive of the need to take action. One thing you can do is to set baselines. This is not exactly low-hanging fruit. It's a little more complicated. It takes some time and energy ongoing, but you can set baselines for what impacts for the areas that you, as a local government, actually has the most impact on. These include energy and water, materials and waste, transportation, land use and mobility, and urban trees, parks, and open spaces. We did our climate action plan, and these were some of our objectives to come out of it. Now, the good news is they're pretty boilerplate. The better news is that local government is non-proprietary. So anything that we have done, or that these people that are going to speak to you this evening about what they have done, you can take that and you can adapt it to your jurisdiction and move forward and make some progress without necessarily having to reinvent the wheel in this case. And you may not, be a place where you can install a wind farm or a solar facility, but there are things that you can do. And you can provide community gardens, affordable housing, build buildings when you have the opportunity to build a new one or to retrofit an existing facility to build it green. You can put in natural stormwater systems, natural drainage systems. You can restore critical areas. You can create transportation systems that are multimodal, that you can encourage transit. You can do stormwater amenities along your arterials. There's a number of things that you can do. Waste management, encouraging recycling, any of these things. Often conservation, it's a pretty easy sell, because if you're not using a resource, then you're saving the money. If you're creating a profit off of a waste stream, then that's a pretty easy sell. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that you can pick, and as you get more, if your citizenry supports it, as you get more comfortable doing it, then there are steps that you can take. And importantly, we also need to be talking with our communities about this, because as you can see, even cities who are doing everything that they can at the municipal level, it's a small subset of the actual carbon footprint of a community. So really, to make a difference in our carbon use and our greenhouse gas emissions, it's important that the major driving force here will be household decision making, and that is where they live, if they live near transit, if they live near their job, what kind of car they drive, what other transportation options they have. There's a lot of overlap too. We have often as cities healthy city strategies and sustainability strategies and housing strategies and comprehensive plan policies and transportation plans. And really, for a lot of those cases, they do intersect in that area where we could call true sustainability. And I'm hoping that you all are feeling inspired now to go out and populate this part. And our speakers tonight will give you more information about things that they have done and specifics to help populate that large, broader area that we can call sustainability.